Hey folks, welcome to Wolfpane's Gaming Den. Today we have the review for Babylonia, a game designed by Dr. René Knizia and published by Ludonova. It's a game for 2 to 4 players. We'll start off by looking at a quick overview of what the game looks like and what it feels like. An example of a turn structure. I'm not going to go through the full details of the rule, they'll be covered in a separate video. And then we'll come back and we'll have a look at what my thoughts are about the game and get a sense on whether this is something that's right for you or not. So let's go to the table and let's see how the game works. All right, everyone. So let's have a quick overview of what a turn order in the game can look like and what sort of like we're looking at as we're looking at the game. I will not go through each and every single element of the rules. I have a separate detailed rules video. If you are looking for something that can allow you to learn the game and play, have a look at that, and that will give you a very detailed walkthrough on it. But this is just to give you a quick overview of what the game looks and feels like. So the game is going to be set up for 2 to 4 players. If you're playing with a 4-player game, you use the whole board. If you're using 2 to 3 players, you will use specific sections and ignore some of the others. You will have your ziggurat tiles set up to the side. Each player will take their player pieces and they will always have a hand of 5 tokens, as you can see over here. And then you're ready to start, basically. So a couple of things that you can see on the board. You have ziggurats, cities, and farms. So on your turn, you're basically going through 3 different steps. You can play down tokens as your first action. As part of the second step, you will score any cities or ziggurat locations that have been completely covered. And then third is basically you're refilling your hand up to your hand size, which is usually a default of 5. Whenever you're playing tokens from your hand onto the board, you can either play any 2 tokens, or you can play 3 or more farmer tokens, as it were. These are the farmer tokens, and then everything else that is not a farmer basically is considered a noble token in the game. Once you're done with the placing, you're scoring. For scoring purposes, you're looking to see how many of your symbols you can match to the different city locations out here. You will score for farm tiles as well if you can successfully manage to place your farm tokens in here. And surrounding a ziggurat token is basically how you will get one of these ziggurat tiles that can give you either a one-off benefit or some sort of an ongoing ability over the course of the game. The game will basically keep on continuing. And at the end of your turn, obviously you're refilling your hand back up to 5. The game will keep on continuing until one of 2 endgame conditions are met, which is either somebody has run out of all of their tokens that they would otherwise have played. And by that, I mean not just the tokens in your reserve that you're drawing from, but also tokens from your hand as well. So once you've run out of everything, the game ends immediately. And whoever has the most points at that stage wins. The other endgame condition that could be triggered as well is if there is 1 or less, or rather 1 or 0 tiles, I should say, city tokens that are left on the board. So farm tokens do not count towards that. You're only interested in city tokens. As these are collected, these will come off the board. And whenever you have 1 or less left at the end of somebody's turn, the game ends immediately. So that's a quick overview of the rules. Let's go back to the table and I'll share my thoughts on the game and how I rate it. All right, so hopefully that overview gave you a good sense of what to expect with the game. Let's go into my thoughts around the game itself, and I'll share my final rating at the very end of it. So to start off, generally speaking, I like the game. It goes really fast. Turn orders can be really quick, regardless of whether you're playing with 2 players or 4 players. The game will go really, really quickly. The back of the box, I mean, it says 60 minutes. Unless you're playing with like 4 players who are playing the game for the very first time, it's highly unlikely that you will get to that 60-minute mark. Chances are, even with the 4-play game, you're probably going to wrap up in about 40 to 45 minutes, as long as everybody's reasonable with the amount of time they take. 2-player games obviously are going to be a little bit faster than that as well. As far as the scaling of the game is concerned, that's where it's not necessarily a criticism, but I don't think the game scales equally between 2 players and 4 players. And I think the game inherently is a little bit different in terms of the experience it gives you. I think the game really shines at 4 players. You can have, the game becomes sort of like, there can be a slightly mean element to it. You're looking to branch off and build across the different locations, and then somebody sees, he or she is going for sort of like big points. If they can connect to that city, let's just, cut them off at that point. So there can be a slight element of that to deal with as you're playing the game. But as it would be with some of other Knizia games that you would have played as well. So this, for me, was definitely a bit of a return to form for Knizia in terms of a game that has very simple rules, very simple overhead, easy to set up, easy to take down, with a lot of the strategy coming from the gameplay itself and the strategies itself, rather than sort of like, oh, here's these 50 different small details you need to keep track of. It is one that would be relatively easy to teach to non-heavy gamers. Keep that in mind. I think from that point of view, it scales well. People will probably like it across this spectrum. Probably not quite a family-weight game, but if you have a family that's used to playing games and has done, you've gone past that introductory lighter games like Century Spice Road and Splendor and so on, and you're looking for something a little bit more, a little deeper, a little bit meatier, then this is one to consider as well potentially at that point. Going back to that point about scaling that I was talking about earlier, the game plays very differently based on if it's 2 versus 4. If it's a 2-player game, you're using specific sections of the board. So in this particular case, you'd be using the smaller island and the middle island, the central island. And what happens in that case is, because it's 2 players, it becomes very tactical almost. The game is tactical generally, but I think it's a little bit more tactical from that point of view. There's only one other person who can mess things up for you at that point. So you're really trying to figure out, well, where do I think he or she is sort of like, looking to connect to, and what they're looking to do versus what I want to do and what I want to accomplish. And it's a little bit easier for you to forecast as well. Whereas with a 4-player game, there's a slightly higher element of chaos because there's a few more things that can happen between you taking your turn and when it comes back to you and you take your turn again. So something to keep in mind. I do feel that the game shines at for what it is more at 4 players than at 2. But I was pleasantly surprised with the 2-player gameplay as well. Even though, like I said, the feel of it is different. It is not a game I would discount at a 2-player count. I think it works well enough. There's a little, there's quite a bit of a neat back and forth in terms of, I see what you're doing, and I'm gonna, maybe stop you from doing that, or well, I have bigger fish to fry, so I'm gonna focus on that and sort of, do that as well. There can be moments depending on your playstyle and the playstyle of the person you're playing with, where you can just focus on your side of the board, or like a specific section of the board, and then you can have the 2 players each doing their own thing. The game's not going to be quite as fun if you do that. It's not really how it was intended to be played, I assume. But it's up to you to decide sort of like what works for you and what your playstyle favors. But I think generally I would play this game at 2 or 3 or 4. But if I really had to choose, 4 is definitely the one to go with. Looking at production quality, art style, and all of this stuff, I'm generally very happy with the production quality of the game itself. The components are strong, good quality. The tiles are fairly thick. As far as the artwork goes, so the artwork on perhaps the city tiles and the farm tiles, and maybe this could be a little bit better, a little bit more colorful, something that pops a little bit more. But that's more a matter of personal taste, I think. And a lot of you may look at it and be like, well, this is just perfectly fine. I don't know what he's complaining about. And that's a very fair statement. What I do like about this, though, is the background art on the board itself. It would have been very easy to make a game like this where the background art is dull and functional but not very artistic. But there's a lot of neat details going on in the background. There's a lot of with the ziggurats, there's some like city done there. It's not highly detailed to the sense that you can look closely and then discover levels of detail that you've not noticed earlier. But it's nice enough at a distance that you would usually see it from. The color aesthetics is beautiful. If you're looking at the water, there are shades of blue and green going on, so it's very unique and distinctive from that sense. It's very functional in terms of the icons that you have to deal with. Even when you're looking at the water tiles and you're trying to figure out which are the ones where it is a water tile versus a land tile, and because some of them can get a little confusing. So for example, if you look at these locations right here, these are definitely water locations. but these are not. But without the waves at the center, you might be looking at them and it might be a little confusing. So it's a really nice touch that they sort of like had that added in there. Just makes it very easy for you to deal with. Other than that, there's not a lot more to say. The wooden tiles, they do what they're supposed to do. I mean, these could have been square tokens or whatever. I think round works well. I don't mind. You might be prone to sort of like knocking some of these over as you're playing, but it's not a major risk unless you're sort of like playing a game with like food and drinks and other stuff around. You should be fairly okay. Uh, yeah, and that's pretty much it. It's a game that I've enjoyed. It's a game that I will definitely want to play again at different play accounts. So with that, my final thoughts. Something that I would definitely recommend as long as you're comfortable with a game that has a little bit of take that or can have a little bit of take that to it. That can have a little bit of direct competition, and as long as you're comfortable with that, wonderful game. For me, this will go down as one of the better games coming out from Rainer Knizia. From sort of like his earlier years where he put out a lot of games that are now considered as classics: Through the Desert, Samurai, Taj Mahal. In fact, this reminds me a little bit of Taj Mahal, not in terms of the mechanics, even though you do have a hand. There you had a hand of cards. Here you have a set of tiles that you're putting down. But in terms of you want to have your things that you want to accomplish, and then the other players have their things that you want to accomplish. And even with the Euro game, there's a little bit of conflict going on, so it's very neat. I would definitely recommend it. Highly recommended. For my rating, I would rate it as a B plus, and I would put it at par, perhaps for now at least, with some of his other better known titles like the ones I mentioned earlier: Samurai, Taj Mahal, Through the Desert, Tigris and Euphrates, and so on. So yeah, I like it. Check it out. If you want to get a better sense on how the game plays, I have a separate teach video. Have a look at that, and leave your thoughts and comments down below. And that's it, folks. Thanks for joining and watching this video, and I'll see you at the next one. Take care.